Okay. Hi, Kavita. How are you?
And thank you. So,
I'm good. Well, we're really glad to have you here today. We're really excited to hear more about your story, and we're looking forward to this. So, are you ready to get started?
yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. So let's start with learning more a bit about you. So, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself in terms of who you are, your education, your career background, and what you do?
My name is Kavita Ndolo. I'm from Machakos, Kenya. Have an education background in engineering, civil engineering. So I graduated from the University of Nairobi in 2015. And then after that, I worked in project management, like we're doing real estate development. So I did that for 5 years until early 2020. So I left work in February 2020, just before Rona hit, to go start a farm. So yeah, the idea was to start a farm before doing my graduate studies. So that's what I do now. Initially it was more like a side hustle, but now it's a full-time gig that I'm doing now. So before moving to the city for school, I grew up on the farm. So it wasn't my first time being exposed to like agriculture and stuff like that. But I think with every visit I made back home, I was just thinking like we could do some more. So when I was thinking about things I could do after 5 years, I felt a little bit stuck in my career. So I was thinking like I could either get another job, like look for a bigger company, because I was working for a sole proprietor. So it was like, well, like it was a small office, and I done as much as I could do where I was working. So I was looking for a bigger challenge. So it was either I start my own business, go to graduate school, or find another job. So every position I was looking at that I was eligible for, I didn't have enough experience for it because I'd got into management quite early. So you're looking at every other job that I could do, just asking you must either have a master's degrees and a 4-year, work experience kind of thing, or 10 years in the industry. So since I didn't have that, I decided I'll do graduate school. So I was gonna do graduate school from fall of 2020. So I decided to leave work early, like just to explore, have some time with family, and do a side gig that would support me as I do my studies. And that's how I got into agriculture. Yeah, so, and when I started, the idea was to transform, because we have a lot of land where I'm at, and I was thinking, why do we have just all this bushland? It could be profitable. And that's how I started Kithekani farms, because it's from the Kiswahili word kichaka, which basically means a bush. So it's turning our bushland into agricultural land. And that was the thinking towards the change. But it wasn't really like, it was not very drastic of a change because we still have like a lot of management work to do. I have workers who do the actual farming, but setting up a company, all that corporate stuff, like raising funds and, running day-to-day stuff, like hiring, firing, planning strategies and, presenting things to banks and stuff like that, coming up with structures. It's starting from a scratch. It's almost like a startup, but without the tech.
Yeah.
Before I got in and before we went commercial, we had oranges, bananas, and mangoes. And then before that, I was just doing subsistence cropping, which is like maize and beans and that kind of thing. When I came in, we converted our egg production unit into more like meat production. So we do deliveries to Nairobi, especially in 2020. And then we started a new line for pig production, which has never been done before in my area, which is what I really wanted to do. And then from there, we've been doing beans and irrigation. So I took a portion of the land now, about 10 acres now, dug a dam that we pump water in and collect water during the rainy season, because we go for about 5 months without rain in my area. So you'd have farms staying idle. So with the water available now, I can farm throughout the year and I can do different sorts of vegetables. Like right now, we have 4 different types of greens under irrigation and beans under irrigation, where initially you would just be staying idle from May till October.
Mm-hmm. And so what's the timeline that we're looking at here, since like you started pig farming and everything, and the dam as well? Is it about a year and a half for all of this?
The idea to start the ideation stage was a year and a half ago. In terms of the pig production, it's just barely over a year, because I remember getting my first piglets in May last year. And then the dam, I excavated and installed the dam liner in January this year. So it's been stages, like every 6 months, we almost double our production and increase the land and cultivation. So we're still growing.
Okay, I just want to follow up on that. So if most of these things are like a year and a half ago, that means it was all closer to the onset of the pandemic, either slightly before that or after that.
Actually,
So,
closer to the onset.
yeah. So can you just tell us a little bit more about like when, like, can you recall when you first learned about the pandemic, and when did you kind of realize that it was going to have an impact in your life?
The first time I heard about the pandemic, I remember it was the last few weeks before I left work. So I had nothing to do. Like I finished all my paperwork. We're just waiting for things to be processed. So I'd gone for a 1-week holiday at the coast. And I remember like reading the news and thinking, oh my goodness, like the way countries are getting locked down, I may get locked down at the coast. And, this will be an issue, like who's gonna stay here for a year or something. And coming back to Nairobi, I think the first time I felt the impact was when I was getting my last payment package, and the office wanted to give me a really huge bonus for having stayed 5 years on the kind of project they've done. So they paid me what was legally required and just a little bit more. And they're just like, with everything going on, we might not be able to afford what we wanted to give you. And that's the first time I felt that impact of like, oh, wow, like everyone now is holding back money. The second impact was like immediately I left work. The following week, that's when the first case was announced in Kenya. And I mean, everyone went on panic mode. It was a matter of like, now what's going to happen now? With everything getting locked down and people panic buying and stuff like that, you're thinking, what if I'm locked down in the city and I can end up in the farm? And then with the exposure in the city, I would have to quarantine a bit before I go back to the farm, because, my folks are there and my grandparents are there. So, you don't want to get them infected and stuff like that. So there's a lot of anxiety to start with, and just uncertainty, and just wondering like, was it the right move to leave work? I think that was the biggest thing to think about. Like with everything going on, was it the right move to be leaving work to start your own gig and other things?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were quite some delays, especially on the pig farming. But like what happened, there's some funding we applied for and we got in, but the disbursement took an extra 6 months, which meant like now I had to bootstrap for a while, which is not something I was expecting. The other thing was that with borders closed in between different regions in Kenya, I couldn't get deliveries for some crucial material that I wanted. So whether it was feeds and piglets to start with and stuff like that. And then because I was using a friend of mine who was doing consultations for me and helping me set up the business, it's like you didn't have that ease of travel and moving around to make things work. So it took a while to get the business going. But at the same time, the restrictions also helped us, because I was stuck at the farm for a while. It's like, you can't get out, you can't go anywhere. So, as much as that is detrimental for social life, for the business, it was really good, because now I didn't have any distractions. It was like, you can sit through your problem and your ideas for quite a while without any external influences, without anything that you're rushing to. So there's no pressure to implement things and pressure to keep things going, which in a sense reduced a lot of costs for us, because, you remove all those transport costs, eating, accommodation, things like that. And it's amazing how ideas worked out. And the other thing was, because I started the company with my family involved a lot, now all of them are home. Like, schools are closed, everyone is working from home. So you definitely have more time together to think through ideas and discuss without any pressure, because you don't need to do anything tomorrow because you don't know what tomorrow is going to be like. So it was easier to plan for marketing, because what happened, especially my region, Machakos County, the government made it easier for markets, like there are no fees for going to farm markets and food markets and things like that. So I was able to do research in the market for free, because I just go back with my produce and see, hey, who's going to buy this? And could I farm this or that? And what are the metrics for that? So it was much easier, and it also helped frame my mindset towards what I wanted to do, especially in marketing, because initially I was thinking of doing deliveries to Nairobi and things like that. But, with COVID and everything that came, I discovered that there was a huge market around me. And in terms of metrics, it worked much better than transporting food to the city.
Mm-hmm. So you said a bit earlier that one of the kind of driving forces for you to get into farming was because you were trying to save up some money for you to pursue your graduate studies. So is that still the case now, or have you now transitioned to having it as your full-time job?
It's initially the dream was quite small, but with everything that it's become, I've discovered this is much more a full-time gig, because initially it was just a small business that I didn't need to register or anything like that. But now we're a registered company with shareholding and things like that. So I had to actually defer my studies for a bit, then had visa issues. So I think I'm going to do it a little bit full-time for maybe 2-3 years before thinking of doing further studies. Or if I do any studies, they'll have to be online, because now the things that now require me, because now it's paying my salary and there's potential for so much growth. So the idea was that if I leave it now when it's growing, to go pursue, opportunities elsewhere, it was almost like cutting off my own feet, because with the pandemic and other things are going, at that point when I was making that decision last year, I wouldn't be sure where things would end up. So why take more risk? So I had to adjust. So now it's more of a full-time gig than a side hustle. Yes, one of the things that happened is like in animal production, the biggest cost is feeds. So once we're locked down, most of our feeds come from Uganda and Tanzania. So we had feeds stuck at the border and things like that, which I think since it began, the feed prices are almost like double now, because they kept increasing month on month. With every new wave, there's an increase in feed prices. So out of that came the opportunity to start making my own stuff. So that's how I got to learn about different ingredients and how I can, instead of buying finished products, I can be mixing for myself. And out of that, I've been able to cut production costs for my farm. And I mean, to date, I do not buy commercial feeds. We just buy the ingredients and we mix for ourselves. And that enables us to even expand further, because we are sure of the quality. It's not just a matter of price. It's you realize that now you can control the quality of what your animals eat and things like that. And the other thing was that it was easier to negotiate for labor, because not a lot of people had work. So people are willing to work for you, and you're able to negotiate better terms as an employer. And even for them, they're glad to have them. So like I've not lacked a labor force, and I've not, be charged crazy prices for different things. And then I think the third thing was I leverage the fact that people are home. One of the things that our business have been able to grow in terms of contacts and business networks and stuff like that is online. Like a lot of people went online. I used that period to make sure that I could really push the narrative of the farm online, especially on Twitter and Instagram and on Google too. So now we're fully mapped to get inquiries for our products all the time. So sometimes we have walk-ins of people that just walk in and buy whatever they can and fill their car boots and things like that. And that has been largely due to the pandemic. So whoever is doing business online, and if you have good marketing skills and you can craft your story well, then you definitely have an opportunity to market better because everyone is available and everyone wants a delivery. Already is going to change now. Like, for instance, now the guys who work for me that are now being asked to work for other firms. And in many senses, you have to ask, like, okay, what's going to keep my guy from going to my uncle next door who is catching on to the farming wave? The biggest benefit I have is that I'm not sitting up now. What has happened with the COVID pandemic, especially in Kenya, is that people have realized that there's a big opportunity in the food market. Like, I was reading some stats today, and this year has had a record import, impact in terms of food. Like, on just half the year, we already done 100 billion. Last year, we didn't do even 100 billion. Like, we already surpassed everything we ever imported, and it's just through half a year. So, like, with a growing population, there's a demand for food. So everyone is getting into farming. So I've watched my neighbors do a lot of that, which means now you have to have proper labor laws and stuff like that. You have to have, what packs are you giving your employees and things like that. But the biggest benefit I've had is that we've done some training with KEPSA, which is like the local organization for businesses. And they've trained us through things like that, like having contracts, having, looking out for your employees, setting up yourself for the market, and, just being properly planned. So the confidence that we have is that we are a step ahead of everyone, especially everyone around us. Like, a lot of them are starting now, but, we've had a year of a head start because everyone slowed down during the pandemic. We didn't slow down. We really invested a lot to put up structures, we did things like that. So right now, everyone is rushing by the fact of the market is like this and like that, but we've been studying it for a while. So we already have customers that, are already coming back. So instead of starting with the customer base now, we are just expanding from what we have initially. So post-pandemic, a lot of things are going to change. But for us, it's a good wave. It's a good wave. Like, now, the problem that happens that I've realized with agriculture, especially locally, is that as much as now we have more feeds because people are growing much more and trading in Tanzania has really increased after the restrictions were lifted, the prices are remaining the same. So you have people going into the market now with harder conditions and thinking this is the usual price for feeds. Because now, for instance, let me give you an example. Like, it's at a kg is going for $50. So when you get in a 100 kg bag, you're doing like $50 for that. At the beginning of the pandemic, that was going for $25. So you have new people that are getting to the market just because there's increased demand, but they're coming in at double the cost. For someone who is able to do their own feeds, you can cut cost of production. You'll not be able to do at that $25 price, but you're doing at $30. So at the market, we'll be selling at the same price, but I'll be making more profit. So that's the kind of leveraging that you need. But unless you've been in the market for quite a while, you don't get it. Yeah.
That's good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. But changing gears a little bit. So as you know, the pandemic has been mentally challenging for lots of people. And you mentioned you didn't rest during the pandemic. You were, ramping up and investing in these opportunities. How would you say that you were able to keep yourself mentally on toes during the pandemic? And what advice would you have for other people who are trying to, start a business in a pandemic,
Oh man, it's so important to look out for yourself. Like, I think I'm lucky because, for one, I live in the country. Like, we have a lot of land. So I was getting breaks in between that. Like, you go to the river and swim, you do a couple of things, and then movement is not as restricted because, you're surrounded by farmland, so you get a break. So I can't imagine being stuck in a house doing that. So there was that bit of, like, I used what was around me. Like, you have pets, you have people, just a few people like family and whatever. So at least there's a lot of outdoors. But even that, like, the stress of wondering when will things change, when will things improve, can just be crazy on you. So the amount of resilience you need it's amazing. So the two things I did is that I did therapy, a bit of therapy last year, and I'm still at it. And that was really helpful. Like just talking to someone and getting professional help will keep you mentally on toes. I think it's not something that is expected, especially of farmers. Expected to just work and produce and sell. But we have minds too. It gets crazy in here too. You go through crazy losses, and there's so much to deal with. And I think the other thing I did is that at some point I learned to take breaks. So every month I would do a hike, and then every 3 months I would take a trip even for a weekend. And that change of scenery, being away from work, just doing something else different, and being away from your daily, the farm needs this from me, the farm needs this from me, this worker needs this from me, I need this from me. There's this and that I have to handle. Just taking a break helps a lot.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, I'm still thinking, like, even though like you were doing all these things to kind of take care of yourself, it still would have been a struggle considering the time that you decided to start your business or expand it.
Yeah.
So do you think that maybe you're just naturally, like that guy, that optimistic guy? Or, I mean, have you always been like innovative, like your decision to build a dam? Is it something that you've just always done?
Yeah, I would say that. Like, one of the things that I've been able to pass on is actually things I've accumulated through my life. Like, with my engineering background, like you're faced with problems every day, so you have to find solutions. Like that's what engineering is like. Take a problem, do the math for it, and come up with a solution. Like that's what I was trained for years to do. And then on top of that, I was doing project management, and my job, the job I was working, I was thrown in quite young. Like I didn't have like a lot of experience in it, and we were working with really time sensitive projects, budget sensitive, and everyone at my organization was double my age, but I was their boss. So I had to grow up really quickly in my head, and I had to make sure that everything works on time. And I managed a project in between elections, which was crazy, in between a lot of, economic changes. So I was used to just dealing with problems on the daily. This was a bit different because they were my problems now. I was dealing with other people's problems. Like it's my boss's money, it's the banks, requiring this and that. It was like the government requiring this and that clearance from us. But now it's me, which means sometimes it can be really tasking because you're asking, why did I set the bar so high for myself and I'm finding such a hard time trying to reach it? But when you reach there, you're so happy and you keep being optimistic. But yeah, to be honest, you cannot farm without optimism, because sometimes you can go, this is a seed I'm putting in the ground and I might see the production 9 months from now. For those 9 months, some days you want to sit next to your tree and be like, grow, please grow. Like I need something to happen to me today. Just something nice, please grow. But yeah, having optimism, being optimistic and, having that work experience has been good for me, really. I was up to date. I'm still shocked that I got into farming. Like I was telling someone yesterday, some guys that I visited, is like, I grew up in the village wanting to leave it and go work in the city, then go work in a different country and that kind of thing. Like my trajectory was out and out and out and out and away. But in a short time, I've turned around and I'm building something locally that's much bigger than I've ever thought. So that was shocking. What was shocking also, it's how you can dream of things and make them happen. So it's little things. I had a friend visiting me yesterday from Tanzania that was here in December, and we talked through some things I will do. When you're in the moment of building something, sometimes you don't see the progress that you make until someone comes and is like, wait, in January, you're talking about doing this. In January, you're talking about doing this. In December, you're talking about doing this. And you've done all of it and then some. So that's when you're like, oh, wow, things are not going that bad. Like, there's a lot of changes. So it's that shock for, because no, we'll grow up thinking, let me go work for someone else. Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? No kid says I want to be a businessman. No kid says that, I want to be a boss. I want to be an employer. But the fact that I've changed from being an employee to an employer, and that's a path that I'm constantly taking now, has been a big mindset shift that has really shocked me in a sense, because to be honest, I was a really good employee. I was just good at helping people solve their problems. My boss loved me. Like, to date, he still calls me. I left 1.5 years ago, but we still talk. Like, he still tells me what he's planning to do. At some point last year, he tried poaching me back for one of his projects. And yeah, I'm just like, I'm not available, but let's talk. I could consult for you.
Did you ever consider going back? When things were hard?
That was really hard because at that time, like, we're just going through a cash flow crisis, and I was like, maybe I could balance both. But I had to be like, yeah, we know what will happen. Like, it was going to give me like a whole project. Like, I want to do like 70 apartments and balance what? I cannot grow mortar and brick and grow trees and pigs. So yeah, it was a hard decision to make, but we're still negotiating 6 months later. He still wants me. It's not neither here nor there, but I'd say like it's, especially locally, it's been a lot of fear, which is true. Like, okay, Kava, people are dying, people are getting sick, but people are also alive and people are also thriving. So what I've found is that you find things on the extreme end. Life happens in the middle. So you'll find that businesses are failing, but no one is telling you that new businesses are starting. You find that the youth have no future, but no one is showing you that the youth are adapting and they're working with the tools that are now available for, whatever life is going to be after this. So there's less positive stuff. Everything is so polarized. And even now when you hear stories like, which is something that actually in my agricultural circles we've been talking about, is that not everyone will tell you how they're failing, because agriculture has a lot of failures. As long as you're growing something that has life, some of it will die.
Yeah.
You're going to have chickens, half of them will die. But everyone wants a selfie with their 1,000 chickens. They don't tell you they lost 500 last week. So one of the things that has been happening, especially around Twitter circles and the guys I farm with, we have this trend that, we don't show people just the great side of farming, that we eat fresh, we eat good food, we have this much fun. It's just like, yeah, some days are tiring. Some days you might miss meals because you're working too hard and you forgot to eat. Some days you want to close up shop, come back to the city and work because, your things are just losses and losses and losses. Like, you wake up one day, too much rain, another day, no rain. And both are extreme cases. So I find that coverage is not, I would say it's not inclusive. I'd say that, because I've had people come interview me at the farm, and then you look at all the questions, you're like, these guys are just looking for a success story. They're not looking for a real story. Like, they want to show people, hey, you can move like this guy from the city to the farm and get money, as opposed to, you can take the skills that you're using at work, which is both up and down. Like, you have good days and bad days, and leverage that in whatever field that you get in, not just agriculture. But all agricultural stories you see on TV is just good. And then when you see that it's bad, they're saying bad. But it's not always that case. What's good for someone else is bad for someone else. What's bad for someone else is good for someone else. Like, we have a feed problem in Kenya. The guys in Tanzania are happy. In Uganda, they're happy. But that's not so far. It's like 400 kilometers away. So, have a balance of stories. So I found that not to be there. Life is in the middle.
Yeah.
Not extremes.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's very, very wise. Life does happen in the middle. That's all the questions that we had for you, unless you have any other details that you would like to share with us.
Actually, let me add something I just remembered, especially that media coverage story. Having moved from the city and living back in the country, a lot of what is affecting people in the city is really helping us back home. For example, when food prices were really high in Nairobi because, the city was locked down, food prices were really cheap back home. Because why? Most farmers would farm to supply schools. Schools are closed. The rest would farm to supply Nairobi. You need a permit to supply Nairobi. So what happened? The markets are flooded. So the entire time of 2020, we had it really good. Like food was really cheap. It was fresh. Everyone was home and farming. So it was a really good year for anyone that was outside the city, especially around my area. And then the curfew didn't really affect us because either way, everyone shuts down by 9 p.m. because what are you doing in the village at 11 p.m.? So there are all these things of people complaining, like the curfew is crazy for us. These restrictions are crazy for us. How do you do social distancing? It's like everyone lives a kilometer from the next neighbor. So, we're fine. Like not many changes were required. But that will never happen in the news. All they'll show you is that our produce is rotting. But no, we also had really, really cheap prices that a lot of them up when the economy opened up a bit this year, that's when there was less food because now everyone is selling to everyone else. Schools open, there's less food in the market because schools just take up a lot of agricultural produce. So there were benefits of the pandemic to people that were outside the lockdown zones. A lot of benefits.
Oh, wow. That's great to know. I had no clue about that. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much
for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for considering me.
Yeah. Learned so much about you, and all the best in your farming and anything else that you decide to get into.
Thank you. All the best as you guys do this project.